Hey everyone, welcome back to Crypto Cash. Thank you so much again for joining me here. Hope you're having a phenomenal day. Taking a quick look, of course, at the crypto market overview, more specifically some order books and blocks, obviously kind of seeing what kind of specific areas we need to focus on with not just Bitcoin, but altcoins as well. Specifically going to be looking at CME futures here with some gaps that are forming for the weekend and obviously some liquidation data that's super relevant and pertinent for you to understand and just make sure that you are staying abreast in this crazy, crazy market. Let's go ahead and take a closer look. Stick around. All right, folks, before we jump into the backend data here, I want to kind of describe a few things that are pretty important that some people may not know about. In fact, I got some DMs, so I figured I'd just cover it now. We do have a $10,000 USDT airdrop. It's consistent and concurrent with the $16,000 individual rewards here for Bitunix. So be sure to check that out. It does expire here in 18 days. So if you've used my link to register in the past, automatically eligible. And also, of course, if you want to use my link to register, consider doing so. They are awesome, no KYC or VPN required exchange. So let's start here with the foundation of just kind of where Bitcoin's at, because obviously that's an important outlier, or we want to identify outliers rather, for Bitcoin and understand the direction it's heading, because it's really just calls the shots for the most part with the majority of altcoins. So regardless of what altcoin that you're trading, always look at Bitcoin first and get that foundation. The foundation here is just to kind of shoot from the hip here, 115,200, that's been consistent from yesterday. We have 106 million, at that level they're willing to be purchased. So these are open orders that haven't been filled yet in that range. You could actually average that into close to about 200 million between 115.2 and 115.3. So there's buying pressure there. There's also selling pressure at 116,300. So we got this wall above and below the price. But if you look at the average amount of selling pressure, even though it's spread out a little bit further, there's actually more selling than there is buying here at this point. So I'm willing to guess that our liquidation long delta is dissipating and or reaching break even. We'll look at that here soon. That's an important factor to recognize here, okay? Let's go ahead and take a quick look at CME futures. Bitcoin's on the far left here, essentially just telling us that we closed, what was it? We closed at 115,500. We're really close to that level right now. So there isn't a significant gap there that's forming. It's kind of small, if you will. Ethereum's a little bit on the larger side here. It's actually not substantial, but we got 44.60 and the current price is close to 4,500. So there's about a $40 gap there. And Solana is pretty much close to break even. It's currently at about 237 some change. So the CME gaps aren't super substantial. I don't think these are going to be significant outliers here for us. Just something to be mindful of, that if we close above or below those ranges, we may have a new gap that's formed. We'll cover that again tomorrow. I always like to kind of refresh your memory on Mondays so we know kind of what that looks like. Taking a look here at Bitcoin, this is just kind of the last 30 days of liquidation, just to give you some quick clarification. 118,800 is that upper area, which is much further away from us than the 114.5 level. So we got more liquidation accumulated in the lower range here, essentially telling us that longs are probably in pretty rough shape, or hypothetically, they are more likely to be in rough shape here soon if the price pulls back, because we're just really close to those levels. Now, liquidation isn't always a guarantee. It just kind of gives us an idea of where the price may go to next. It kind of acts like a magnet. It's similar to open interest in a lot of ways too, where there's like a lot of pressure that kind of inevitably brings the price to that level. Okay, so it's just something to be aware of here. Now, when we look at liquidation here, I actually may cover this coin here later today. Aster is dominating. It's got tons of liquidation, which implies there's tons of buying and selling. So that coin is doing pretty awesome. We'll consider looking at that later, but for the most part here, if we look, Ethereum has a 3-to-1 ratio of longs getting liquidated versus shorts. So hypothetically, we could see the price go higher because of that, but that's not exactly the way that it always works. But as we see here, volume for Bitcoin is super low. We've only got 5 million liquidations. That may seem like a lot, but it's actually not for Bitcoin, considering it should be the largest and the most amount of liquidation on average. So that is an interesting outlier, kind of letting us know that Bitcoin isn't all that sought after this weekend, which I understand is kind of a boring coin at this point with this range-bound activity this weekend. All that said, alt-season index is still quite high, so make sure that you understand that altcoin market cap is essentially very, very high right now. And you can see there's Aster as well, that number 3 right there. But the concept here is that whatever coins are outperforming Bitcoin, these are the ones you want to consider investing in, or just more importantly, understanding that these top 100 coins are doing better than Bitcoin gives us the indication that altcoin season is coming or in full effect. It depends on how you look at it, really. I don't think that we're going to see like a true alt season like we've seen before. That's just my personal opinion. I'll elaborate on that later. Well, the concept here is that there's going to be some outliers, but for the most part, altcoins are in pretty good shape. Let's take a look here at Bitcoin liquidation levels here on the chart. Just kind of give you some better perspective. This is a daily time frame. We can see this range of 111 as a low estimate to 114.5 for longs versus shorts getting or with potential liquidation events. Furthermore, we can see above the price, same thing here, about 118 to 119 as a rough estimate. So it just kind of gives you some quick perspective on where the liquidation levels are and just kind of gives us an understanding of where we're at there. I didn't touch on fear and greed index, but we're still kind of in neutral territory right now. So nothing really to be alarmed with here at this point. So if we look at the 4-hour time frame here, this is just kind of, longs versus shorts. These are average top traders. The average top trader right now is shorting this weekend, which makes perfect sense. We did the same thing ourselves as well. We took a short yesterday with AVAX, 21% in 8 hours. So it wasn't like a super substantial trade, but it is something nonetheless. And it's important to recognize that taking the longs right now this weekend isn't necessarily the best call. Obviously, it depends on the coin you're trading, but for the most part, we have a lot of divergences on the charts, and I'll show you here soon. If you didn't catch my video from yesterday, that Bitcoin does look like it wants to continue to pull back a little bit further. This doesn't tell us too much here. Standard weekend trading activity. We take a look here at open interest on the far right. Just to reiterate and reaffirm, 113K is the likely next target. Open interest works a lot like a magnet. It's very similar to liquidation in a lot of ways. If you have liquidation and open interest in the same spot, there's a great chance you see the price action return to that level. Now, it'll likely pivot and bounce off that range, so I'm expecting 113K to hold as a support if we see it. But between now and then, that's kind of what we're looking at there, the overall sense. 113 and then secondary 111. And if you recall correctly, all those liquidation events are spread out between 111 and 114.5. So distinct probability we do see those levels. Here's liquidation short delta or long deltas that's now short, essentially, telling us we have 1 billion more in shorts than longs. And when that was reflected on the liquidation charts that we just looked at. We look at this here on the left-hand side. This is just a heat map kind of giving us a different perspective. And we can see there's a ton of liquidation down as low as 107 to 105. I think those are fairly safe for the moment, but between now and then, the 110 roughly to 114.5 is that area of interest. Take a look here. This is open interest, basically the delta for open interest. I've been looking at this for quite a few years, and generally speaking, the lower the open interest delta, the more likelihood the price goes down. Furthermore, if we have true retail longs, the percentage over here on the left-hand side, if that's above the open interest delta, it generally implies further sustainability in this range as far as shorts are concerned with that resistance wall at 117. So my speculation here is that with us seeing all this information so far, there's further indication that we're going to go lower here with Bitcoin. So those are just kind of things that I can kind of see on the charts here, or sorry, there are things you don't see on the charts that translate that not a lot of people look at. But once more, nothing's foolproof, but the probability I feel of further downside for Bitcoin is greater, or at least, just retesting that 113K range. It's just so we can get a nice little pivot and a bounce there. So what we're going to do here is just take a quick look at the daily time frame, give you some perspective, and just kind of recognize that we are in a potential cup and handle situation here. So I'm not truly bearish, but once more, the price is more likely to continue a little bit lower before it takes off, right? The main reason why is because we're rejecting essentially off of this resistance level at 117,000. We've tried 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, previously 6 times to break that level, haven't yet. Now you could argue that we're more likely to break it the next time we retest it. That's true, but we're gonna need some volume to see that happen. Obviously, as a weekend, volume is tapering off. So it's really hard to identify on a weekend if we're gonna see a pump or not. But at this point here, majority of the backend data is telling us that we're kind of losing that momentum. We can see stochastic swinging down, and we're also recognizing here as well that we're getting closer to 50 in the RSI with money flow index pulling back. That usually implies less sustainability in the current price point. If we look a little bit closer here, we can see above the price action, there is a lot of moving averages, which are essentially telling us that we are below those key levels here. Okay, so it's kind of just like the trend is shifting. You can kind of see this little wall here essentially is starting to form at 116. So just something to be mindful of. We're also remaining below 50 in the RSI. Generally speaking, the best consideration is to consider shorting here, and like in hindsight, you long here, right? So you long when 50 on the RSI is initially being tested, and you short the inverse as well. And at this point here, kind of getting that indication too that short play may be a better call. So I don't recommend taking a long at this point. That's the easy way to understand it. That's where Bitcoin is at. Not a phenomenal situation, but it is what it is. And I'm always going to shoot you straight and let you know. So don't forget, again, to like the video, comment below. Let's go ahead and take a look here at the next series of altcoins. Let's take a look. Quick heads up to my traders, make sure you take full advantage of this offer here from Bitunix. There's a significant deposit reward bonus as well as a $16,000 individual reward for just trading on the exchange. If you use my link to register in the past, you're automatically eligible. If you use my link to register now, you're eligible for all future trading bonuses and competitions. Check out the links down below for more information. All right, folks, let's go and jump into the Litecoin chart first and double check this coin, kind of see roughly where we're at. And when I sent out the playout chart, it does look like there's a lot of support below the price with open interest in this 114 range. So be mindful, 114 could very well be the bottom for us. We pivoted off that level here locally, but once more, that is still very tentative with Bitcoin effectively being fairly bearish, remaining under that 116 to 117K range. All that said, liquidation short delta is kind of at break even. That doesn't tell us too much, but this leverage amount, liquidation rather, to the downside implies sustainability, but also more propensity for a pretty significant correction to that 110 range, or at least 112, to sweep some of those longs here, those late longs over the weekend. So I don't really like to take longs into that kind of liquidation below the price action. But once more, this coin is looking stronger than most in a lot of ways here, establishing higher highs now and higher lows on the lower time frames. Let's start with the daily time frame, kind of work our way down. Get some perspective. We're still honoring our ascending trends here. We're back up over the 20-day SMA. And then we can also see our point of control here. If we zoom out, it appears to be 114. So I could see why there's a lot of longs in that range, because that's a pretty safe area. We haven't closed below that level in the last 7 days worth of trading. So ultimately that reinforces support at 114. We're right there at break even on the RSI. Generally speaking, these are not like phenomenal situations here. Overall, we're looking at an interesting little situation here for the divergence as well, with money flow index below the price, or below the RSI rather. Those are usually not so favorable signs, kind of letting us know we're tentatively breaking bearish. Those are just kind of early indications. Now, based on everything we looked at here so far, and the fact that we haven't closed truly above this 114.5 mark, 115.5 rather, that local high, this is not a perfect situation by any stretch. So while we have slightly more bullish convergences on the chart, we have slightly more bearish divergences on the backend data too. So it's too much conflicting information to warrant a comfortable trade, or a trade that with confidence rather. So at this point, I would be very careful taking a short position with this coin. If you're going to err on the side of caution, longs does make a little bit more sense, but it's hard to want to recommend a long when Bitcoin's pulling back. So if Bitcoin does not go back any further and it continues to edge its way up, I think Litecoin will 2x on the way up. It's definitely looking ready to go here as far as some good little convergences there. But once more, they're little, they're not substantial, and generally speaking, your best trade is no trade in situations like this. So that's Chainlink. That's Litecoin. Let's go ahead and look at Chainlink next here. And this is a coin that's concerning me a little bit here. It didn't bounce off its point of control at 24 from before. We mentioned when the last time I looked at this here that 24 was a consideration for a long, but that was under the impression Bitcoin didn't dump like it did here recently. A lot of altcoins had a pretty bad day, and Chainlink is one of those coins. So if we take a look at the back end here for Chainlink, we want to recognize a couple of important things. So first of all, with open interest, we're kind of at our last leg of defense here. So $23 at the last leg. If we lose this level, we're probably going to see 22 or lower. Okay. Now, if we look at liquidation, you can see a pretty significant amount of liquidation below the price. So that doesn't really give me a lot of confidence here that we're going to hold this level. Same thing here with liquidation short delta. We're at about 150 million in the red, essentially telling us the bears are in complete control of this coin. So those aren't really favorable signs you want to try to take a long into, because you're trying to run downhill, run uphill. I'm not sure the analogy. Oh, here's a better one. You're trying to drive into oncoming traffic and bob and weave. It's just higher risk, right? Why not go with the trend? And right now the trend is down. However, once more, this last leg of support here at $23, we can see that held fairly well in the recent past. If Bitcoin can once more kind of hold its range, I think we will see Chainlink recover here. But a lot of this is contingent on Bitcoin, and that's not the kind of trades you'd like to take, right? Coins that are underperforming versus Bitcoin are usually not the ones you want to take longs against, or longs into rather. Okay, so we look at the macro structure here, kind of zooming out just ever since we've been in this range for roughly about a month now, a month and a half roughly. We can see the point of control is at 2340. So until we reclaim that level, and get back up over that rough estimate of 24, if you round up a little bit, we're not going to be in really great shape here to consider a long position. And I know it seems crazy. Why is this guy recommending we wait for a higher price point to take a long? That makes no sense. Well, yeah, to a novice, that doesn't make sense. But to somebody who's been trading for a while, you need to understand that there's key levels that we need to get back above in order to have confidence in taking a trade in that direction. It doesn't matter if it's a higher price point. It remains very little. Now, from a spot bag perspective, average in all you want. That's fine. But most of my traders are leverage traders, and there's a consideration for making sure that you are using good due diligence when you take a trade. And right now it would be irresponsible to take a trade against that. We've also lost 50 in the RSI here in the last 48 hours. Money flow index is pulling back while it's high. That's all well and good. That's not like a great sign. And if we do take a look here at the the MACD, we're still diverging as well. So these are not like optimal signs that we want to try to trade into. Taking a look at the 4 hour, of course, we're below all moving averages. That's right there at $24. So if we happen to reclaim $24 or come back up to it, that would be an excellent consideration for a short, because oftentimes you'll see these when you're range bound in these little types of ranges, the halfway mark is that rejection level. So 24 to me is an excellent consideration for a short. If we see this coin reclaim that level and Bitcoin closes below 116K. So once more, there's a lot of things going on here that you have to kind of be mindful of. It's not just a one size fits all for this coin. Do I think you should short at support? No, definitely not. But if you're going to consider a short, average into your position on the way up, because this coin has a lot of bearish divergences. There's a lot of reasons why taking long right now is too high of a risk. So those are my thoughts there. I hope that makes sense. And I'm sorry if it's not really what you're looking for, because once more, that's just kind of how trading is. It's all about risk management and making sure you cut your losses early if you can. Sometimes you don't have to, but in this case here, it's a double-edged sword, right? Be very, very careful trading this coin to the upside. That's all I can say about that. Just before we take a look at the next altcoin, I want to recommend you consider trading with Bitunix. If you use my link to register down below or have in the past, you'll always be eligible for future trading competitions, but this one is awesome. It's probably the best one I've seen yet, with a full-on $16,000 individual prize pool, as well as a collective prize pool as well for the top 30 traders. Be sure to check out the link down below for more information. Moving on to AVAX, this is a coin that we actually did short. You probably saw that, of course, if you're a part of our community. I sent this out recently here. We've got a couple of open trades too, but AVAX, we got 21.5% in 8 hours. We shorted from the 33.50 level, okay? So the overall sentiment here is still the same. Nothing has really changed. We haven't broken our descending trend line. We're still in a position where we're establishing lower lows and lower highs. And let's go ahead and double check the back end to see if there's anything kind of telling us here. On the last 7 days, we can see from the open interest, 30, it's just round numbers, say $30, $31.50, and $32. So between $30 and $32, we have this magnetic attraction, so to speak, right? So the simple way to understand is open interest works like a magnet in a lot of ways. It'll pull the price towards it and or work as a support. So while it's nice to know that we have support below us, the price will probably reclaim those levels in the relative near future, because there's a pretty significant fair value gap too. So all that stuff kind of combined, and you look at that and you compare that with liquidation delta essentially hitting break even. This is usually a shift in momentum. Anytime you start to see red here from a pretty significant uptrend, it basically implies that the bears are now in control, or that we have just as many bears as we do bulls. And when you have that leading into a key level support that's already been broken, it doesn't really give you a lot of confidence in taking along. The propensity for further downside is much higher, especially when you couple that with significant liquidation between 31 and 32.50. So my anticipation here is that 30 to 32, yeah, let's just kind of say that range of 30 to 32 will be retested soon. We're already, halfway there, of course, but once more, that's just kind of the general concept. Daily time frame is still going to be very bullish, so keep this in mind. You can still have coins pull back and be tentatively bearish on the short term and still be macro bullish, right? So in this case here, there's nothing really telling us that AVAX it's going to go to zero, right? It's not going to pull back super substantial, but it's going to naturally pull back to its local resistances, which for right now is that $30 range. It may even be lower too, depending on, but we'll talk about that later if we get there. Between now and then, I think it's pretty safe to presume that 30 to 32 will happen, under the impression Bitcoin doesn't go straight up. Okay, now Bitcoin just gets a wild hair tomorrow and goes to the metaphorical moon. We see 120K or something crazy. Then of course AVAX is going to take off. But this coin is massively overextended. Market makers are securing profits, and they're just slowly allowing people, these late longs, to get trapped. And once they are, then the price is going to come down to sweep them with that liquidation range. Okay. Now, if we look at the 1 hour time frame, this is kind of what was able to help me identify a short-term reversal. We could see that we had a point of control at this $34 mark. So our average entry was between $32.50 and $34.50. So hypothetically, I think we got in like right here. The price action, it inevitably is retesting its lower high, lower lows, and its previous high as a new resistance. So either way, those are just kind of some things that I looked for. If you didn't catch my analysis, that's pretty much it. Okay, so that's AVAX in a nutshell there. Still good on the macro, don't get me wrong. I think this coin still looks pretty decent, but if you're not in a short on this coin for the moment, you're probably missing out. Okay, so now let's take a look here at the last one here, Ondo. We have some community members asking, what's going to happen here now that we've hit this $1 mark. That's the psychological support level for this coin. And we're going to look at the macro structure here and start with liquidation first. So from a macro perspective, 1 month's worth of open interest, 103 was that level. So I mentioned previously, it was like a week ago, of course, easy to say now, but I think it was like 103 to 107 was the range of support at the time. And if the price loses that level, then it invalidates the consideration for long. So right now at this point, once more, easy to say, hindsight's 2020, but generally speaking, when you break below that kind of level, open interest and or points of control, volume support, you're more likely to see further downside. And we've lost that, right? So in a sense here, you want to be kind of very careful taking a long position just because this is a psychological support. And I use bunny ears because $1, $1.50, $2, whatever coin you're trading, any large round number, you're going to find a lot of support in those levels or resistance, which depending on which side you're on. We can see liquidation short delta. You may not actually be able to see it, but it is down pretty significant at about 50 million. And then we also have liquidation as low as 92.50. So to me, an interest in averaging in between 92 and 96 cents makes a lot of sense, no pun intended there, because there's a lot of open interest and of course, open interest is above, but there's a lot of liquidation and the delta has shifted, so the bears are in control. What do you think the bears are going to do? They're going to continue to sweep the price action to destroy all opposition. That way they can pump the price action up as they see fit. Okay, so it's standard trading 101. It's very common. Not to say that the price couldn't still recover for Ondo right now. It's just seemingly less likely now that we've established lower lows. We've broken this local macro structure here of 102 to 103. So the daily time frame is hanging on by a thread. We're right there at 50 on the RSI, stochastic swinging down, MACD is actually diverging now. So these are all signs that you generally want to short into. So a short at the 1 to 103 makes a little bit more sense to me at this point. Once more, it all depends on Bitcoin, because if Bitcoin shoots up, then Ondo will respond in kind. I don't think this coin is like permanently bearish by any stretch. We can also recognize too, there is potential for a bullish type of flag pattern here as well. Now, once more, you don't just trade patterns alone, but the concept remains the same here. Establishing lower lows, lower highs. The reason why bullish type of patterns are present in these descending trends is because they include sweeping liquidation. So now this liquidation has been swept, at least partially swept. It'd probably go a little bit further. We're going to probably see that natural response here to the upside because once more, a lot of profits have been taken and there's less people trying to take longs because they're scared now and market makers can pump the price. Okay, anyways, the whole concept here is that staying below 102 is generally bearish. A closure above that 102 to 103 mark, I think would be moderately bullish. Okay, that does require Bitcoin to close above 116, 117K, which it has failed to do so multiple days in a row. So those are things that you want to factor in. So while it's not like a one size fits all, or this isn't like a perfect like situation where we can kind of be like, hey, we're good to go on either direction. It's kind of an indecisive transition. You're best not to trade these kind of situations. Okay, so I'm always going to recommend that err on the side of caution. Obviously, there are certain trades that I like to take, and you'll typically know what those are. Make sure if you are in our community, you always read through our trade alerts. I provide you with insight on coins that we take trades with. For example, we took a 21% AVAX short here recently. All right, that was a good trade because we had a lot of divergences that we just covered today. Okay, those are things you want to look for. But to my community members, make sure you read these. These are all things that are here for you, so you know why I take the trades that I take. I don't just blindly shoot from the hip and take some high, ridiculous leverage trade because I'm feeling irie that day. It's not how it works. You trade based on what you see on the charts and the back-end data. You make an informed decision. Simple as that. All right, folks, have a great rest of your day. Thanks again so much for your time. We'll look forward to seeing you in the next one. Take care.